Hello and welcome to Root Causes, the PKI and Security podcast where a pair of industry veterans talk about all matters digital certificates and PKI. I'm Tim Callan, Chief Experience Officer at Sectigo, and I'm here with Jason Sirocco, Senior Fellow at Sectigo. How you doing today, Jay?
I am doing great here in Toronto. It's a beautiful day.
It's a lovely day. It's a perfect day outside. Here we are inside, but what are you going to do? Okay, so what we want to talk about today is we all know that certificate lifespans are shortening. We know that 90-day TLS is coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We also know that though it is I would say, a popular and well-accepted protocol, that the ACME API is far from universally supported. So here's the question I'm going to throw to you. On the day that SSL certificates move to 90 days, maximum term, day 0, what happens to the vendors, the OS and software vendors who do not support ACME?
Well, Tim, I think you and I might be the two people who read down to the bottom of the blog that was put up by the Chromium Root program.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that part of what they said, and this is in promotion of automation, they basically said, if you want to be a trusted CA, you have to support some form of an automation.
Right. That's now a requirement. That's a requirement for any new routes that are added today.
Right.
And moving forward, it's going to become a requirement even for existing.
There you
CAs.
go. So an important point, though, being made.
Yeah.
And so I would say that if you're not supporting an automation technology, if you don't have a well-established proprietary automation system within your CA ecosystem, then you're probably looking at ACME. And so to me, if you're not supporting ACME with 90-day, what are you doing? First of all, let's paint the picture if you're really not supporting that at all.
Mm-hmm.
That means that you have to, not just provisioning a certificate every 90 days, you're provisioning a certificate that's meant to be used in a manual renewal.
Yeah.
And so I think those people already, with 1 year certificate, 398 day certificates, are already feeling pain of, oh my God, it used to be 5 years, now 3 years, 2 years. Oh my God, 1 year, every year I have to renew this cert?
Yeah.
That's a pain already at 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
At 90 day, to me, that's below the threshold of what's acceptable in terms of the amount of work.
So then does that mean, so I'm an IT administrator, I'm a sysadmin, and I have various products that I've been on for a number of years. And suddenly I find myself holding the bag because I don't have ACME support. Is that what motivates me to bite the bullet and change providers?
Yes,
Right?
it has to be. I'm going to give an example that's of recent times, Tim. You've been covering the Bugzilla bloodbath story. Mass revocation is a problem in 2024 still.
Right.
And so if mass revocation is painful in 2024, what's it going to look like 2025 future, where you essentially have the technical equivalent of a mass revocation every 90 days?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think you sit there and you evaluate your various technology, and whatever the pros are of perhaps what you're on, it's not going to outweigh this insane, not just the pain, not just the work, but the risk. Like, I view risk as a bigger problem than work, in all honesty.
Of course, because the work's going to fail.
Right.
And that's therefore maximum risk.
Yeah. I mean, it's a certainty that somewhere along the line
something's going to break.
Work. Right. And so then under those circumstances, people are going to say, look, I just can't live with this. All right. So then if you're a technology vendor, and the specific timeline for 90 days gets announced. Let's say it gets announced and it's coming in a year. Now you've got a year basically to have that not just roadmapped but delivered. Some of these people move slow. Some might not be done in a year.
I would not want to be at a CA, certificate authority, publicly trusted certificate authority, who does not have an automation technology at the point of 90 days
Sure.
being a rule. That is
Oh yeah. So that'll kill a CA. But I think it might also kill like a router. Like if I'm trying to buy a piece of hardware and that piece of hardware won't allow Acme based installation, I'm not going to buy that, right? Now I might already own that hardware because this stuff sticks around for a long time. And if my vendor isn't giving me a patch or a firmware upgrade so I can use Acme to install there, I might have to cycle that out.
But you know what, Tim? You're talking about scenarios that were already had lack of agility, right? We knew they were going to be painful no matter what.
Yeah.
The reason I brought up mass revocation event is because that's like mainstream people with resources running web servers, Apache, Nginx, like total mainstream stuff, who can't even handle revocation events. Never mind swap everything every 90 days
Yeah.
manually.
Right. Yeah, I think the thing about the revocation events, and I actually said this publicly on a Bugzilla bug not that long ago, in a comment on someone else's bug, was I think there's a difference between my subscriber can't swap these certs out in the allocated time period, and my subscriber doesn't want to swap these certs out in the allocated time frame. I think we frequently have CAs saying the first one when the truth is the second one.
That's a good point.
Right?
90-day forces it.
Yes, 90-day does force it, right? And it takes it out of their hands. And that becomes one of the reasons for it. But then, of course, the argument they come back with is they'll say, well, look, these guys don't have automation in place. They can't do it. Now, you bring up a good point, which is automation has to happen on two sides. And if there's a CA that isn't supporting Acme, I think that CA just is going to go out of business. I think that's that clear. I think they'll just die. And I think they're all probably smart enough to know that. And they're all probably all going to go support Acme so that they don't die. And if they do, then they need to die, right? The other part of it, though, is like things like infrastructure and operating systems. These things are entrenched. Like moving these things can be painful. And I can imagine a lot of enterprises in a real painful choice, which is I either can't support automation, I have to do this every 90 days, or I have to rip out a bunch of infrastructure and I have to have cost and a project and risk that I wasn't planning on. And I don't know, a lot of people might find themselves in a pickle.
So, Tim, I'm going to connect a couple things that you just said
Okay.
to things we talked about previous, which is first of all, this is the reason, this pain point you just pointed out is the reason we don't have 90 days yet.
Yeah.
Because this pain point's real.
Yep.
But let's face it, we went, big Google initiative and other people's initiative to get certs everywhere. Most of the world's browsing happens over an encrypted session. Hallelujah. But still to this day, most of those certificates are unmanaged and not automated. So we're not dealing with a certificate agility world yet, which is why we can't just turn the key and go 90-day, which would be a nice thing to do. However, we talked about crypto agility being a boil the frog scenario right now, which is like, oh, I can ignore it. The boogeyman's in the room, but oh my God, he's getting closer. I'm going to keep ignoring it. And all of a sudden, it's going to be less than a year before the panic button gets hit and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I think certificate agility has its own boil the frog situation.
Yeah.
And I think people are literally saying to themselves, I'm just going to completely ignore this until there's a land rush on the last 1 year certs. And then I'm going to scramble in 398 days to get this done.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, you certainly are seeing a I'm not going to deal with it until it's a crisis mentality, which I don't quite understand. I mean, I think you see that in a lot of places in the IT world in general. That probably has to do with competition for budget, competition for resources, competition for roadmap, competition for time, right? I always have lots of things I want to do. I think it also owes itself to the fact that um, sort of maintenance projects always have to fight for a resource over let's call them net improvement projects. Like if I do this project here, then you're going to get this obvious benefit. If I do that main project there, then it's got to be done eventually or everything's going to fail. The second one is just so much less appealing. And so those are probably all have to do with the reasons why. But at the end of the day, what you said, I think is very right, which is you're going to find a bunch of organizations that don't get to the starting line until there isn't enough time to finish the race on time. They're literally not going to start soon enough.
Tim, here's a thought. And this is my
Mm-hmm.
maybe the final thought I've got on this subject is this. We talked very recently about PQC having to be a top-down issue because it is risk.
Right.
I think that you and I quite often are talking to systems administrators. We're quite
Mm-hmm.
often talking to people who are sitting at the Linux command line doing this job. And some of them are quite motivated to keep it manual for
Yeah.
whatever reason. We've
Yeah.
podcasted on this subject in the
Sure.
past.
Sure.
I think the decision of risk needs to be taken out of their hands. And I'm sorry to all you folks who are, hey, if you're a Linux administrator and you're agreeing with 90 day, then you're with us. But for those of you who, for some reason, are taking your company's risk onto your decision book, then what you're doing is wrong. And I think that the leadership in an enterprise needs, unfortunately, this is a very technical subject, and therefore typically they leave it to the people in the trench. But make no mistake, it's the people in the trench that are now taking the risk decisions for you. And that's bad. I think CEO level down needs to be making the decision. Yeah, we're going to write the check for what it takes to put in ACME in as many places as possible, or whatever provisioning technology that works for you in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
It has to happen. Shortened certificate lifespans is the right thing. And as part of a cryptographic center of excellence, put it as part of whatever program you want. You have to be taking inventory of your cryptographic assets anyway. If you're not
Yes.
doing that right now,
Right.
you as a risk officer, whether that's CEO
Mhm.
or anyone else on the board, right? Or ELT, you need to understand that quantum is coming, and therefore you need to at least be taking inventory. So why not take the first few steps towards getting ready for crypto agility
Mhm.
when what you really should be doing is the first few steps is to get ready for certificate agility.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hand in hand to me.
For sure. And if you look around, it's just obviously clear that the enterprise is very far from that today. And what's I think a little more variable and very important is to what degree is that because their their platforms and their tools that they're running today simply don't allow it, just plain won't do it. And to what degree is it the fact that they will do it, but they haven't prioritized it?
I think it is the latter.
Well, that's good news if it is, because that's solvable. right?
I definitely think there are legacy systems out there
Mhm.
that are the exception, but I definitely think a lot of people are running Apache on
Yeah,
their web servers that has,
right.
Acme capability built right in. And, talk to your certificate authority who is issuing those certificates, and
Yeah.
they will have that technology for you.
Or if they don't, they're gonna
Yeah,
go away,
or if they
right?
don't, they're out of business very
They
soon.
will be out of business for sure. So I think they're all gonna know that, and I think they're all gonna provide
Right. So the excuse
it. Mhm.
that a CEO could make is, all right, my technical people told me that there's no option, so therefore I'm going to wait. No, that's not the excuse you can use.
Yeah.
I think that you're looking at a risk event that you need to be on top of, and the solutions are out there. So seek them out, and seek them out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I buy all of that.
All right,
All right.
Tim.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
This has been Root Causes.